Super excited for another episode of the RepVue podcast this week. We have Christian Kletzl, CEO and founder of UserGems on, and Christian's going to talk about talent, how he thinks about talent. And certainly if you're interested in UserGems, you can get some inside scoop on maybe a fast track to getting a role there. So Christian, welcome. Great to have you and excited to chat through it.
Hey, Ryan, Darin, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. So I guess, get the quick ones out of the way first. Just quick background on you and maybe tell us a little bit about what UserGems does from the standpoint of value proposition. What product are you bringing to market? And tell us a little bit about that, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, happy to. So maybe let's start a little bit with me. So I'm originally from Austria. So they studied actually engineering there. Was a developer and consultant at Microsoft, and then came to the US, did my MBA in Chicago, and then did probably the shortest stint possible at Google. So I was a product manager there for 4 months. And then that's when my co-founder and I, who's actually my identical twin brother, and I started a company, got into Y Combinator. So that's basically the jump. I always thought I need to make it to San Francisco. This is where the action happens. So the goal was like, get a job at Google and then start the own company. And that was a little bit the short version of how we got here.
You were in the recruiting space with your Y Combinator company with Smart Hires.
Yes, exactly. So to then come to what we're doing here now and how we actually got there, because I think you generally always see the end of the story, but you don't see how long actually the story took to get there. But for us, so we were working in this company, it's called Smart Hires. The idea was that in the interviewing space, you're interviewing so many people, and sometimes someone is a really great candidate, but not the right fit for you. And this, especially around junior, senior, the location, what they actually want to do. And we've always seen these companies share candidate with each other. I still have a lot of friends who are also founders, and then hey, I talked to this person, he's great, but just not the right fit for where we are at the company. And so that was the idea of Smart Hire. So it was between companies with the same investor. I wanted to make the transition to where we're now, but I don't know if you have a question there.
Yeah, I mean, so it could have been, let's say you've got, one round of funding, there may be one or two investors that put in, and then you get to the next round of funding, maybe there's 3 or 4, and it keeps going up. So it could have been the cluster could be pretty big across multiple VCs as an example, or just one.
Exactly. No, I think that was actually the idea, especially why we liked it in terms of customer acquisition, is that it grows. You're part of the YC network, but you also got funding from Sequoia. So we get access to the Sequoia network. And because of this, because you also have and then 3 companies have Andreessen, so we also get access to this. So we thought in terms of customer acquisition, that would have been really easy. But yeah, you did have access to several of these networks.
Got it. How did that lead to UserGems?
Yeah, so for us, it was when a candidate signed up, we were trying to make it as easy as possible. So we tried to grab as much as possible publicly available information. So kind of they sign up with the email, and then we already pre-filled their profile. So we had this information. We made it really easy. Fun fact, some loved it, some found it really creepy. I found that interesting, but it meant that we were really good at publicly available data. And then at one point, we saw that one of our customers, one of the recruiters that use the platform, they changed their job. And then we saw this on LinkedIn, tracked them down and turned them into a customer again. And we thought, hey, this is really easy. And we should track all of our customers. And what we actually did is we were in Austria back then, and we locked ourselves in the mountains in Austria. We got a cabin in the woods for a week with the engineers. And then we said, hey, can we code this out, the alpha version in a week? And we said, we're not going to get out of the cabin until we have something that works. And so we developed this for us internally, and it worked really well because we already had kind of the core technology of publicly available information. So in a sense, we just took it and said, get the public information, not of our, in a sense, of the candidates, but actually of our customers, and then see where they are right now. And we had this YC network of other companies that use the product or our friends, and then we told them about this. And they were actually more interested in this than they were interested in our other product that that we were actively selling. And that's when we realized, hey, I think we need to maybe change the direction of the company.
Interesting. Every good startup's got some kind of pivot story in there.
It's only the question whether they share it or not. Yeah, you need to arrive at something, and it takes a few iterations usually.
And now you've got roughly 50 FTEs in that area, in that range for UserGems, and growing. You raised some financing last year. It looks like a reasonable round, and so you're continuing to grow the team, I presume, and kind of tell us where you are today and what the next year or two looks like in terms of growth, and then we'll dig into some kind of hiring stuff.
Yes, happy to. So to start with, I think it was clear from the story, but what UserGems does is we track your champions for job changes. So in a sales space, the idea is that you power users, your champions. If you have, let's say, 100,000 people using your product, these people change their job all the time, and we track them and let you know when they change so you can sell to them again. So that's a little bit UserGems. And then in terms of the company, so I think the biggest one is, so we raised a seed beginning of last year, and then a Series A, 20 million Series A end of last year from Kraft and Ancork, and Tiger was in there. And we have been growing the team since then. I think we ended the year at maybe 15, 20 people, and we're now at 45 people. And especially because we hired a few SDRs, also with your help just recently. But still increasing the team. I think the goal is to double one more time until the end of the year.
So a question on that, as you grew and you raised money, what was the profile of the first sales hire that you brought on board? Was it a senior level person? Was it a SDR? Did you have somebody I need somebody that's going to build this out, or how did you think about that?
Yeah, I think for us it was, so I was the first salesperson, and I don't have a sales background. This told me, okay, it's probably we have product market fit because I'm able to sell it. That was a little bit the idea. But for the first few sales hires, it was for us, we wanted someone with experience. So they know how, in a sense, a good sales process runs, and then we can get them into our organization and they can get started reasonably quickly. And I think in our case, we're changing it a little bit now. We actually have an onboarding process for SDR and AE now. Back then, the onboarding process was, let's go on a customer call or let's go on a prospect call. So the idea was for us, how quickly can we ramp this person? And for this reason, it was important that they know how to sell, they know how to conduct themselves in a sales conversation.
How did you know you needed to bring on a salesperson versus just you selling?
I think it was mostly around we were scaling, and the number of prospect conversations that we were having, I couldn't cover that myself anymore. I think we certainly went in that area. We always went what's the maximum, and then where is really a need for new people, and that's when we started hiring.
Got it. Yeah, that's a good place to be. There's a lot of companies that will bring on salespeople too early, even before the CEO founder is selling themselves. That's a big red flag for me, because CEO and founders, you have that leg up. You've got the title.
Yeah, 100%. No, and I think it's even more. Otherwise, you go in a situation where there's no product market fit. You're behaving in kind of the CRO role without, in a sense, the CRO title. And I think if that's the case, if you're the first salesperson, then might as well be part of the founding team. So I think that's really the job of the CEO here. Yeah.
Yep. Agreed.
So the first few sales folks that you brought on board, were they kind of building the process as they got up to speed in selling, or had you kind of laid some of that foundation for the sales process? Yeah,
I certainly thought I did, but and there was a process, there was how we talk about the value, but just comparing where we are now in the sales process versus where we've been a year ago. We actually hired the first 2 people about 13 months ago. We've so many better processes, so much better material, so many better talk tracks now, just because we have people that can work on this and have seen it, how good it looks like in the past, and could bring this to our organization. So I would say there were some processes, and we knew roughly how to talk about it and how to sell it, but certainly it's much better now.
You mentioned talk tracks. What high level, what is the, if I'm a salesperson coming into your team, what does the tech stack look like? CRM, like call intelligence type stuff, and in engagement or cadence stuff? What are the core few things that you guys have in place?
Beyond your own tool too.
Yes, exactly. So the most important one, Ryan, okay, is
UserGems. Yeah.
Yes. In addition to our own technology, which actually really helps, because we get the information of who to reach out to from our own product, which allows us to scale quite a bit. I think my marketing said, if we wouldn't have had this, she would have quit already, because it helped us scale with few people. But coming back to your question, I would say the answer is actually all of them. And what I mean by this is, like, I think salespeople are always surprised how many of the technologies we have that help them. And so we have Salesforce and Outreach as the two big ones. We have Orem for call software. We have Scratchpad, so you can easier manage your Salesforce. We have Superhuman, so you can easier manage your communication. So really all that work, if we think that a tool can help you be more efficient, then we want to get it. We have Gong and Zoom for call recording as well.
How do you so you hit on something there. If you think it can be helpful, what does that process look like when you guys are bringing on a new tool? Like, how do you decide that? Is it kind of bottoms up? Is it top down?
Yeah, I think so far for all of these tools, I think it has been bottoms up actually, and I think we see this a whole lot, right? In the whole movement in, like, 1 or 2 salespeople try it out as much as possible. And I'm saying this, having a company where we, like, UserGems is actually not something that the individual salesperson can bring in, because, like, our tool, like, we need rev up support so that it works in the background. Like, in a sense, we actually don't want to be a tool where the individual rep has to do a whole lot of things. But for a lot of the tools that we have, it was like either me trying it out, or, like, for example, for Orem and SDR brought it on.
Yep. And I think that's a misconception that people have. It's like, I got to go straight to the top right away when you're, and we're going a little off topic here, but it is interesting. Like you can champion, like, the end user who then brings it up. It may be a slower sales cycle, but if you can go both sides, that's where the magic really happens. Hey, CEO, I heard from your SDR that these are some challenges, right?
Totally. I mean, that's also, once again, a plug for UserGems, because we always say, like, I think the first thought is always, I want to track the decision makers, the people, the opportunity contacts. But what I always preach is, like, optimize for love, like, track the SDRs, track the AEs that use your product, and work with them as the groundswell. Like, you get really important information from them of, like, what is the organization evaluating? What are the criteria? So much more than, and then you actually have really good top-down conversations.
Yep. And there's a lot of information gaps that skip levels don't provide, that an SDR can get up to a CRO of, like, here's the boots on the ground conversation versus
100%.
hearing.
Yeah. Because for me as leadership, it's really important that if I'm buying a tool, that there is adoption. Like, I think the worst part is if I'm buying something and I push it on everyone and then nobody uses it. So I'm looking for, like, commitment from the SDRs. Here's what we thinking about buying. Like, if they didn't bring it to me, like, here's what we think of buying. What's your thought? Like, are you going to use this? Try it out for a little bit.
Yeah. So that said, let's pivot a little bit to, like, the profile of rep that you try to hire. Your early stage, do you view the people that you're bringing on as evangelists? Like, what's your ideal profile of a hire?
Yeah. What do you mean by evangelism here?
Sorry?
What do you mean by evangelism here?
Like, you've got a new tool, right? Like, you're like, do you view your salespeople as kind of building your brand as well too?
Yeah, brand, give feedback. I think the really interesting thing for us is that we're selling to sales and marketing. Yep. So it's really easy for, like, a candidate we talk to actually, like, understand the value of the product. And then at the same time, because of this, we're actually looking for a lot of feedback from, like, the boots on the ground. For us, these are the boots on the ground that talk to the customer, that talk to the prospect, have their own opinion. So I think it's really important for us, like, you understand the product, you understand the value proposition of the product, because I think for no other role, it's as important to be able to identify with what the company's producing than if you're a salesperson. Like, every single day you go out, and because you don't want to, like, just sell something and don't believe in it. You want to sell it. You want to know, like, this product brings a real value, and it's my goal to actually make you see the value. And the more authentically I can do this, the better. So I feel like this is number one, understand the value and really believe in it. And I think that's for us, but also for the candidate.
Then breaking that down or taking that down another level from a tactical standpoint, are there profiles that your team, your team, your sales leaders, your recruiting team, are there, hey, we want somebody that's sold to sales and marketing. Hey, we want somebody with, if you're hiring an account executive, is there some your experience that you're targeting? Is there, how do you think about screening candidates? What does that profile look like for you when you see the candidate come through and you're like, oh, wow, yeah, we need to talk to that person?
Yeah. So I think sales and marketing experience is beneficial. Obviously, like we like seeing this, but we certainly want to make sure it's not the only thing we look for. I think it's very easy to completely focus on this, and then you overlook a lot of really strong candidates. I think there's obviously the resume. Like we always look for self-starters. Like how much, like are you like how driven are you? Like I think they're, depending on the organization you're targeting for, like there are different pros and cons. And I would like you to be aware of those. Like if you work for a startup, you have the benefit of like, I don't have these rigid processes. I have a lot of freedom, but this comes in a sense at a cost of like, there are no processes. There's very little material. So as long as I'm aware of what I'm getting myself into, and it's also very different selling styles. Like I think it's actually harder for me to hire from a company, let's say Google. Like you could be the sales superstar at Google, but it's a very different environment. Like at Google, you pick up the phone and the person, most likely they already talked to your colleagues, they're probably already customers and you're upselling. But at least everyone already knows your name, versus at a startup, you can assume they don't know your name, or they've maybe heard of it, but have no idea what you're doing. And so this is like, that's why I'm looking for either a person that knows this, in a sense, the disadvantage of a startup, either by having experienced it or by then in the call directly addressing it and discussing it.
And that's the evangelism side. It's talking about something that people don't even know about. The sales team almost becomes a bit of the marketing team as well this early.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right. So we've got knows and appreciates deeply the value proposition that you offer. We have maybe some startup experience is valuable because of where you are in your arc of implemented processes and marketing collateral material. Self-starter / driven. How do you have a scorecard, or how do you kind of measure for like self-starter driven? Are there things you're looking for? Are there questions that you might ask? And I guess before I even get into that, are you still personally interviewing the sales, account executive potential hires?
Yes, exactly. I'm still involved. In this case, in the final round, like we combine the final round with like a mock call and then a fit call with me. Mm-hmm. And I think my focus there is like when we talk self-starter, it's all about like what new project have you led? Like what is an initiative that you've driven that either improved the sales for you or maybe even for your whole organization? Like specifically because like we're getting sales enablement now, but we didn't have it before. So it's kind of like everyone steps up a little bit and does things that at a larger organization, maybe you have someone doing it. But I think that actually the most important thing that I'm evaluating in my call is then also like in a sense coachability, but specifically like what did you learn from your past experience? I think like, for example, when I look back at when I started selling versus, and I had zero idea how to do this, versus now where I would say I'm actually not that bad at selling anymore. And it was painful. And there were like 400 lessons that I learned the hard way. And I want to see that someone also like had painful experience. Like it could even be good experience, something I tried and worked well, but it can also be painful experiences, something that I tried and it totally didn't work. And because of this, I do things differently now. And I want to see like these pivotal moments of how is your sales process different now than 2 years ago.
When you look out, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years from now, like, do you envision a sales team that's been a previous user's gem, like user? like there's a lot of sales tools where the sales team becomes previous users, right? They become these like subject matter experts. Do you even think about that yet, or are you not there?
I feel like this is a really good question, and I feel bad if we hire from customers as well. So I think like we're kind of trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
Hopefully at some point, every company is our customer, and then we can't really not hire there. I think we need to be mindful, like it's not possible that we only hire from our customers, because then once again, it would mean we would overlook people.
Yeah.
So I think you can show your passion otherwise as well. If you show the passion by having used it before, I mean, certainly would love to hear that.
Yeah. When you think about getting candidates in the funnel, what are the different places you're getting them from? What are you seeing as working?
I think there was an answer probably like a month ago, and there's now an answer that's different, because I think RepVue brings us so many candidates, and I was not paid to say this, just highlighting. I think that we get a lot of really good candidates from RepVue right now. So I would say inbound there. I think in addition to that, we have an outbound motion. Like we have an outbound motion in our sales process. And I think the recruiting process is actually very similar. You identify candidates, you reach out with hopefully a personalized message, and then you track them across the funnel.
Yeah.
Okay. One question, I'm curious, given your background in product and some of the PM roles that you've had, and how do you contrast the interview process and as an interviewer for sales professionals versus engineering hires? Like, what's harder? Is one harder than the other, and how different are they for you? I'm going to assume that you probably participate in an engineering interview process as well at the stage of company that you're at. So I'm just curious to get your perspective on that, because I think it's probably something that a lot of salespeople would be curious about too.
Absolutely. I think it depends also on, in a sense, the stage of the interviewing funnel. So if you're early on, like if you look at like our interview steps, like the first few steps is all about like your capabilities. And in engineering, that's actually easy, because like here is a coding challenge. Please do this. And like we have long coding challenges, several hours where we even pay you for it, but where we can see how good are you in coding, and then we go through your code. And I think that's kind of like the hard skill department. Versus for selling, we try to also put you in a real life scenario where you sell to us. But I feel like it's a little bit more difficult, because it's more soft skill. It's a situation you're unfamiliar with. Like what if you're outside of the sales and marketing space, and now you should actually talk about like the need of the head of sales buyer. So I think we're putting you, it gets a little bit harder to compare across people based on their experience. So I think, Darin.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think the first few rounds are about like the hard and soft skills of how good are you at the job. And I think this is different. But now I'm more and more just involved in the final round. And then the final round is about fit, about coachability. Yeah. And surprisingly, this is then actually very similar. Like I wanna learn more about you. I want to learn more about how you developed as a person, and also your goals as a person. So the question in this case actually very similar.
Yeah. Salespeople are generally good at selling themselves. Not surprisingly.
Oh, go ahead, Christian. Go ahead.
That was actually, especially because I'm European, that was the number one advice that I got when I moved to the US. It's like, if you're interviewing salespeople, they are so much better in interviewing than you are. And like this whole, like, I'm very good at like, I'm not sure if I should call it exaggeration, but like at like highlighting my accomplishments much more than the European. I think the European is always a little bit more on the humble side, versus the American is very good at just selling themselves, as you say. And I heard for a European interviewing sales in America, it's actually really, really hard to evaluate skill.
Yeah.
It's funny, Christian, you say that. I'm a native Californian, and I've moved to Raleigh, and I'm learning so much from the way Ryan presents himself in the South, because it's a different level.
Even that is different.
What you're talking about, selling yourself. There's a lot more humbleness, I think, than California breeds, at least in my 2 years of being here. And yeah, for better or worse, but I'm quickly learning that. It's been interesting.
Yeah, and I mean there are differences across America, and then there are huge differences across the countries.
Yeah. When I used to sell as an individual contributor seller, I would essentially transform my persona meaningfully based on if I'm in New York or if I'm in the Bay Area or if I'm in Texas, or where it's a totally different approach. It's kind of a similar, well, a little off topic, but in terms of interviewing different roles, salespeople notoriously can be a challenge, and I've interviewed a lot of them, and it's still hard. We still get it wrong, and so don't feel bad if you're seeing that as a challenge. You talked about the interview process. Like, how many steps are there in your kind of core sales interview process? Account executive, what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, and I mean we know, at least until now, I think the market was very hot and you had to act fast. So we thought about like, how can we make the interview process as seamless as possible, as fast as possible. So right now we have kind of like 5 steps, like 5 different people, but actually collected together in 3 steps. So we have the recruiting call with our recruiter, and then we have a mock interview, like a mock sales call with one of our AEs, and then a fit call with our customer success manager. And that's in a 1-hour block. So basically we have the recruiter call, hopefully within 48 hours, we have another call with 2 more people. And if that looks good, then within 48 hours, we have another block with another AE where we have another mock situation, and with me. So the idea is like you get to see 5 people from the organization, ask your questions, but on the other hand, it's actually really fast and hopefully good experience. And I think that helped us get a leg up there because time is so much of essence in the hiring process.
I mean, there's a story of you interviewing somebody on Monday and making an offer by Friday. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible.
Last week, I think they applied on Monday. Maybe the first interview might not have even been Monday.
Okay. We can move fast. Yeah.
It's a significant competitive advantage, and following on that, you mentioned kind of the market. A lot of companies second half of last year, kind of through first couple months of this year, did obviously raised a lot of money, right? So there's a lot of money out there, and we know a lot of that is going towards hiring. A lot of it is going towards sales hiring. Have you seen any now? Obviously, the macroeconomic conditions have slowed things down a bit. Has that impacted your kind of hiring funnel at all, or how are you all kind of looking at that over the next for the next few months?
Yeah, I think it's hard for us to actually have a comparison because there's kind of like a pre and a post RepVue world for us. So we have a really good candidate, really great candidates apply through that. I think there's generally, we're in touch with other companies, with other startups from the same investor to see how they think about hiring over the next 6 months. And I think I'm hearing basically 2 different stories here. And it depends a little bit both on how much money you raised and your run rate. And I want to highlight this because if candidates are hearing this, these are the 2 questions I would be asking. Because based on these 2 factors, and specifically your run rate, and there's something I like, it's called burn multiple, like how much money are you spending to generate revenue? And based on these, there are 2 paths. And one path is I actually need to get my costs under control, and I probably stop hiring right now. But if you have really good unit economics and you have raised a good amount of money, then now is actually probably a good time to be a little bit more aggressive in hiring, because it allows you to, because if others stop hiring, it means you have a better access to actually great candidate pool. And so I think as companies are thinking about these, and these are the 2 opinions I keep hearing, similarly, candidates should be thinking about the same metrics.
And a candidate that's going to be that educated and inquisitive is the kind of candidate you want to hire, because that's the kind of discovery they're going to go do with your prospects as well too.
Yeah, 100%. I think the questions you ask in an interview shows me the questions you're going to ask when you talk to a prospect. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, love that. And burn multiple being a function of new ARR during the period over cash burn during that same period, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What's a candidate that you were like, we love this person, they did great, but they didn't end up getting the job? Maybe something broke down along the way in the interview process.
Yeah, and I think that question is especially interesting based on our history of having smart hires. Like this could be a candidate that was then referred to another company. I think if I think back about like candidates where it's like, damn it, we should have hired this person, but we didn't. I think the biggest question here is if we didn't know what good looks like. Like specifically, if you start hiring for a very new role, I mean, that was for us when we started hiring AEs, we didn't know what to look for. But I think more and more as we hire for new roles like sales enablement, then we first need to get to a baseline of, do we actually understand what good looks like? And this means there could actually, like, what if the first candidate is actually the best? There's something called the wedding dilemma. I don't know if I should get into this. There's a mathematical formula on how to optimize this. But I think more generally, if we didn't understand how to evaluate a person, then thinking back, there's one candidate where I'm thinking back and like they gave all the right answers in terms of like what did they learn in the past. And I'm still thinking like we should have hired that person, but at the time we just didn't have the understanding of this is what we're looking for in a candidate.
What you were just describing with the first candidate may be good enough. You're basically describing FOMO, right? Like you're like, oh, we have somebody great, but who else? The fear of missing out, right? Like what else is out there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there's the mathematical formula. So look up the wedding dilemma, where it's like, actually, you should, even if they're great in the first period, you should reject them. And then you should hire the first person that's better than the best person in the first third of your time. So there's a mathematical formula, but it's still hard.
That's why we created the podcast, is to get things like the wedding dilemma. Bro, I've never heard of this. Like, okay. But I know FOMO, right? Like, yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it. I'm guessing it involves selecting a partner, a life partner, and hopefully it should be an interesting read.
Which, like, you never know, like, what if I marry like the first person? Is this the best person I could have married? But if I don't marry them, then they're probably gone. So this is very like a yes/no decision. So how do you optimize that?
Yeah, and
highly recommend it.
Yeah, apply it to your hiring. I like it.
100%. Yeah.
Dating, hiring, sales, it's all the same. It's all the same funnel optimization.
Yeah.
Do you have a dating funnel? Yeah. I mean,
yeah. Yeah. Actually, so I'll bring this up, Ryan, because we were talking about this last week. So we're looking at building a back-end solution into RepVue where you can kind of keep track of your interviews if you're a candidate that's like interviewing the companies. Ryan, sorry if I'm spilling the beans here.
That's okay.
It's gonna come out. But I joked, I was like, I feel like people might use this for dating too. Like it might be like their digital, like, dating CRM too.
Yeah, I mean, you could have a connection to, I don't know, the Tinder API and use that for that.
It'd be interesting to look at Notion data to see all the different things that people are using Notion for. And I'm sure there's a million spreadsheets of your social life, for lack of a more specific term.
Slacking yourself if you're out on a date, you're like, oh, I need to keep track of notes. Yeah. So the team, what if we ask them why do they like working with you, Christian?
I mean, I sometimes get this question in the interview, and I always say you should actually ask them, and I hope they tell the truth. But I think what I hear from my team, I would say, I think there are a few things. Like because I was the first salesperson, because I was the first CSM, I think I like to lead from the front. So I'm right there with you. Like I come into a deal if I need to. I strategize with you. And I tell people, like, you cannot annoy me. Like you cannot annoy me with too many questions, with too much ask for help, because I will be there. And I wonder how long that's scalable based on the team size. But right now, I think I'm still doing it. But I think the other thing is also that I in a sense, I actually like it if someone I hire is better at the task than I am. And I think because ultimately I am hiring you for this task, so my hope is actually that you're better at this than I am. And I think that this makes me very open to people saying, like, to either people like discussing with me, or just to people saying, like, you've been doing it like this. I don't think that's the right way to do it. Like, can we try this? And I think like we had one person come in, like, and they evaluated the current like revenue operations situation, and they were afraid to offend me by saying, hey, like this doesn't work, like this is what we should be tackling. And I was super welcoming of this, because actually, yes, that's why I hired you. Like, we need to change this. And I think that makes it easy to work with me. That's the feedback I got, but ultimately I think you need to ask other people.
Love it. We have solicited a lot of feedback from your team, and the results are in, and they're very, very positive when you check out the presence that UserGems has on the RepVue platform. So congrats on that.
Yeah, I was very excited to see that. Yeah, it's just feedback from the team, and I think that's the most important one.
Yeah, absolutely. What any last questions, Darin?
Yeah, we asked this to everybody that allows us to ask it. If you had a candidate, or have you had a candidate ask to see the quota attainment dashboard of your team? Maybe you've got that built out in Salesforce where you can see what your reps are in percentage to quota.
Yeah, I don't think we've got that question yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, maybe now we do. If you ask this question all the time, we certainly get like, not like show me your dashboard, but like how is quota attainment? So we talk about this, but I think like obviously this is super important. We try to be as transparent as possible. So we go even a step further. We actually share our Series A deck. Like if we make an offer to a candidate, we share our Series A deck. Because for me, it's always so interesting that like an investor, they don't risk very much. Like they risk other people's money. And they ask a million questions about the health of the company. And they want a presentation, and they want to like discuss with you, versus a candidate actually risks a lot, because it's their time, like the opportunity cost of their life. And so that's why we say like if, and some people are really good at asking the right question, but on the other hand, like investors already asked them. So let me just share with you the deck that we created, and then you have all the information that you need to make a really good decision.
Yeah, and if you're new to a career, maybe you're fresh out of college, you don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know to ask about burn rate and
100%.
Yeah, I love that. The transparency is so needed, especially earlier stage, right? Like if you're going to IBM, Oracle, you go read an earnings call transcript. You can hear where they're at. You can read a 10K, right? Like you don't get that. I love that you're sharing that with the team. It's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, love that.
Excellent.
Cool. Thanks, Christian. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, great.
Yeah, this has been incredible. Yeah, there's tons of actionable stuff for folks that are interested in UserGems, and great share on who the profile is, and the some of the questions to ask. So we love that, and that'll be super actionable for our users. So really appreciate that, and of course we appreciate the partnership between UserGems and RepVue, and expect to continue to drive success there as well.
Absolutely, I'm certain of that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Christian.